bracelet is. I'm gonna make sure that her arm is protracted, okay? So she's laying on her scapula, not her shoulder. Because if you have her laying on her shoulder, that could be really painful. So then I'm also going to make sure that her affected leg is bent. Okay? Because I need to steal one. Sorry. Because you want to inhibit the extensor tone in the lower extremity. Okay? That's why her leg is bent. And then I put a cushion in between her legs so that her knees don't develop pressure sores. Okay? I would probably want Laura to scooch back a little bit so that her arm is fully on the mat. And then to make sure she doesn't fall backwards, I can put this behind her. Okay, she's in bed, a bolster or a cushion behind her. We're using this huge bolster that's totally inappropriate for these things. That's what we have, so. And I'm also making sure that her head is flexed forward a little bit, okay? That also is going to inhibit any synergies from happening because MDT is all about eliminating the synergies, okay? So, her head is flexed, her scapula is protracted, her knee is bent, and she looks pretty comfortable. Is there anything else? Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, we didn't do that last time. Ankle dorsiflexion. Because of the extensor synergy. If the leg was an extensor synergy, it would be plantar twist. Okay. So now we're going to switch and pretend that the side she's laying on is her unaffected side. Okay. So this time, I want her to lean forward a little bit. I'm going to bring this leg forward on the mat, and I can prop it up a little bit to make it more comfortable for her. And her leg is still bent, her ankle is dorsiflexed. And then this arm, I want the arm to be out in protraction and resting on the pillow. And what would be even better, this is a little big for this, but if you had something that was at an incline, you always want to watch out for edema right after a stroke, okay? So by putting an incline, we're raising up her extremity to prevent edema, okay? I think that's it for that. Any questions about that one? Sorry. Okay. Lying supine. You don't really want to be lying in supine a lot because of the TLR reflex, but you can't really help it when they're in the hospital because nursing is going to have a rotating schedule. So they're going to go in and they're going to rotate everybody every half hour or so.
Prevent pressure sores.
Yeah, to prevent pressure sores. So they're going to end up supine at some point. But if you can educate the nurses on how to position the person in the safest way possible for them, like prevent any retraction in the shoulder, any pain in the shoulder, then it's going to be better for the person, obviously. All right, so her head is supported. I also want to make sure that her scapula is protracted. And I'm going to raise the arm up a little bit, some padding. Where'd the bolster go?
Other side.
Can you kick it under? Thanks. And then,
This is my affected side.
yeah, so if we wanted to just have one leg flexed, we could do that, but sometimes it's nice to have both legs flexed.
Yes.
And if her foot was on the bed still, you want to make sure there was a cushion under her heel too, so that you could develop a pressure sore there. So the knee is flexed, the ankle is flexed, the shoulder is protracted, and we've got the arm elevated to prevent any edema. Okay? That's it.
It's really, really good to break up that tone when you're working on, even working with the upper extremity to make sure that lower extremity isn't in extensor tone. So even though we may, like when I was working with Gary, I had a pillow under his affected knee, or a bolster to give him a little flexion. Because I want always to provide this disassociation between the trunk and the pelvis and the leg, and I don't want it to be, because the tone is going to overflow and affect other areas. So always break up that tone in the lower, even if you're not working on the lower. It's good positioning.
You can also, if you're working with someone really supine, if I wanted to make sure that her shoulder was still in protraction, maybe I would use my knee and she could rest her arm, so that I'm using any body part available
Yeah.
to make
So
sure
we do
that
an
she's,
NDT.
yeah,
Yeah.
to make sure she's in the right positioning. Because I might have to use my hands for something else, so I have my knee there. All right. Another position that you can use if you're working with someone in the clinic and they start to really fatigue and you want to give them a break, or you notice they're going into a kyphotic posture and you want to stretch them out, this is a really great position to put someone in. Speech word. To stretch out their back. So Laura's all kyphotic and I want to stretch her out. So I'm going to, yeah, her pecs are pulling her in. So we made these in the first lab, and it's just pipe insulation. These things cost like $1 at the hardware store. We cut them up and we made them the right sizes for the lumbar spine and the spinal cord. Okay, so those are the two positions of it. So she's got one there, and then I'm going to ask Lauren to lay back. And see how it's just stretching her out. And I can also provide some deep pressure to the pecs to really stretch her out.
So it's accentuating the curve of like the lumbar and the thoracic spine.
So this is if you notice kyphotic.
For how long do you do it?
Just about any one of your patients that comes into your clinic that's had a stroke is gonna look like kyphotic. So they could all benefit from this, and I use this technique when I'm giving someone a little break, but I'm still working on elongation. And they love it. Your patients will be working really hard for you and suffering because you're putting them through so much, and then you can give them something that makes them feel really good.
How long do you do that for?
5 minutes.
Are there any precautions, like if they're extremely at risk for shoulder subluxation, or like that you wouldn't do that?
I'd watch their shoulder when I'm positioning them, but most patients really benefit from that. Now, I had a lady this summer who I used 2 bolsters put together because it was just, she was a little heavy and it was just like too much, and she's not flexible like all of you guys, so yeah, I put 2 bolsters, but it really worked well. Before we go and try this out, I just wanted to talk to you about positioning someone in a wheelchair, that you want to also look on that outline here. And when you have someone in a wheelchair and they have a posterior pelvic tilt, thoracic kyphosis, and a hemiplegic arm that's maybe dangling in spokes, you know, because they're not aware of it, what would you like to do to fix them in that chair? Good. So is there a positioning device that we could use?
A wedge in the seat or a built-up size that will get more,
Right.
right?
So a wedge cushion, a lot of times, I mean, one of the first things you're gonna do, it depends on what place you work, but you will be positioning someone so they can get in the wheelchair. And so that may be one of the things that you'll do. Yeah. Yeah, the wedge is in the front, the deep sides in the front, and then it helps you to go into that anterior pelvic. So, we used to use pelvic straps, and I used to make those before there was such a problem with any type of restraint. And it really helped. If you put a strap at the waist, people slip under it, but if you put it at the pelvis, it helps keep the pelvis in line. So it really works nice, and I used to make them with Velcro, but that was a long time ago. There you go. Are you trying to demonstrate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the, you would want the bump in the back. Right?
Yeah, you want the wider part in the front. Yeah.
So that's making me more.
In fact, we put signs on them all the time for the aides because they do it the opposite way all the time. Yeah. The other thing, what about that hemiplegic arm? How do we give it some support? Pardon? Well, sling, I'm not a huge fan of slings, but I do see their use sometimes, and I have had patients that do the good slings, but not in the chair. I think there's a better way. You said arm prop. I don't like arm props, sorry, okay? And the reason I don't like them, and they use them where I work, okay? And I hate them, because the arm is never on them in the right position. But if someone has their arm there, you're really stretching here, and a lot of times abduction is painful, so you're holding that arm on a prolonged stretch, and then if you start to sink down into the wheelchair, you're even stretching that more. So I like the half tray. I don't like the whole tray because it feels like you're in a high chair. It's a little demeaning. Don't give me a whole tray ever if I need one. I want a nice half tray, okay? All right. I want the kind that flips up and is clear. All right. So I have a few requests there. Yes, you had your.
I was going to say arm tray, but it was
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's the problem?